The first thing Ethan Calloway noticed was the silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that hung too long, like a held breath. It wasn't just quiet in their new home nestled in the folds of Salt Lake Valley. It was measured, intentional. Their mailbox had been open again. It had become a ritual, checking the mailbox flap every morning like a man checking for landmines. Junk mail scattered on the walk, flyers for lawn care companies they never hired, and a thin slip of paper folded with the same creased precision as a flag at a military funeral. But today, nothing, which scared him more. 2 weeks earlier, 3 men in matching Navy uniforms had walked up their porch without knocking. No names, no logos, just boots, blank badges, and clipboards held like battering rams. Ethan answered the door with a hesitant smile, the kind you give when you're still trying to believe everything's a misunderstanding. "Are you the legal occupant of this parcel?" the tallest one asked, tapping the storm door with his pen like a judge calling court. "Sorry, do you mean our house?" Ethan had replied, blinking. They didn't answer. One man just read from a clipboard. "You've been flagged for compliance inspection under Section 7B of the Neighborhood Security Compact." "We don't have an HOA," Ethan said. "Not relevant," the third man muttered. "This block now falls under Metork Preservation and Zoning Authority." Nora was upstairs, but she saw everything. Ethan didn't know she was watching through the second-floor window, calculating probabilities like she used to on night ops in Kabul. When she stepped outside, jeans, boots, and an old squadron hoodie, her voice didn't rise. It landed. "That's not a real agency," she said. For a moment, even the birds stopped. The clipboard guy adjusted his stance. "This is a lawful assessment," he tried. Nora's tone didn't change. "It's a bluff. You're trespassing. You need to calm down," said the tall one. "I said leave." They backed off slowly, muttering something about returning with formal enforcement. Then they disappeared in a black SUV. No plates, no markings, just rubber on asphalt and air thick with something Ethan couldn't name, but would later learn to call pressure testing. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. Not because he was afraid, but because he knew something had been set in motion, and it wasn't stopping. At 3:12 a.m., he found a flag in the yard. White. Small. The size of a pencil. Printed in faded ink. Zone 48. Subject to removal. Nora was already waiting in the kitchen when he came back inside. She didn't ask what it said. She didn't need to. Scare tactic, she whispered, sipping coffee she never finished. The next day, the cameras went offline. A note had been taped to the back of their security panel, routine HOA maintenance, which was fascinating since they still didn't have an HOA. Then came the lasagna. Karen Whitaker, neighborhood welcomer, arrived at their doorstep with a dish wrapped in foil and a smile so tight it belonged in a museum of psychological warfare. "Hi there," she chirped. "Heard you got our little note." Nora stood beside Ethan, arms crossed. Karen leaned in with a smirk and said, "It's nothing personal. We just have very precise expectations here." Ethan accepted the lasagna like it was radioactive. They never ate it. Nora bagged it and froze it with the label "Potential Hazard, Do Not Thaw." Then the sprinklers stopped working. Then the mailbox started opening by itself. Then came the fines. 8 violations arrived on thick, watermark-stamped paper smelling faintly of toner and chlorine. Charges included unauthorized porch curvature and non-compliant mailbox silhouette. One was simply labeled emotive landscaping. Penalty, $1,122 due in 14 days. Non-compliance would result in escalated review procedures. Ethan tried calling the city, the zoning department, even the county clerk. All gave the same response. That area now falls under private jurisdiction. One clerk even whispered, "Don't fight them on paper. They win." That was when Ethan realized he wasn't just out of his depth, he was drowning. But Nora wasn't. She'd pulled satellite maps from county records, overlaid traffic flow diagrams, and started a digital file named Recon, Glenwood District. Hostile takeover suspected. Ethan didn't ask questions. He didn't want answers he couldn't understand. Instead, he did what he did best. He called the weirdest, most paranoid guy in their entire zip code. Dan. Dan was a conspiracy theorist, a cryptid-chasing drone pilot who brewed his own root beer and owned a Faraday cage for his toaster. But he believed Nora immediately. 10 minutes later, Dan was on their roof with a thermos and a buzzing quadcopter named Nancy. "We've got a quadrant sweep," he said through the walkie. Multiple heat signatures at sidewalk level. One scanned your garage with LiDAR. Why? Ethan asked. They're building a 3D tactical profile. That's not just surveillance. That's prep. The next day, someone tried to open their garage mid-afternoon. A man in khaki pants and a black vest walked inside, clipboard in hand, staring at the water heater. Safety inspection, he said. This isn't your house, Ethan barked. The man smiled, serene as a monk, just making sure everything's compliant. Then Nora appeared. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. There is no Section 5E, she said. The man left. That night, Ethan sat on the porch alone and understood something terrifying. They weren't trying to take the house. They were trying to rewrite who owned it. The next morning, a certified letter arrived claiming the Callaways were non-resident occupants. Inside their backyard, a stranger in boots was measuring their grass. Ethan ran outside. You're trespassing. Civic Restoration Zoning Review, the man replied, smirking. Nora stepped out. Her stance changed the air. You're not official, she said. The man twitched near his radio, but Nora was already moving. Not attacking, not retreating, just existing in a way that made resistance impossible. He left. Ethan asked her that night, what are they? Nora stared at her laptop, where parcel maps bled into contractor rosters and surveillance nodes. Private enforcement. Testing the edge. You say that like it's normal. It is, she said. Just not here. There's a kind of quiet that settles before a storm, not the silence of peace, but the hush of calculation. That was the air inside Ethan Callaway's kitchen the night Nora opened the black case. It looked like a tactical briefcase, unremarkable to anyone who hadn't carried one. But Ethan saw it differently now. This wasn't a souvenir from Nora's Navy years. It was a vault, and it was about to unlock something he wasn't sure he wanted to see. The latches popped open with twin clicks, sharp and sterile. Inside was a tablet, 2 burner phones, a black binder with no markings, and a flash drive sealed with a label that simply read, Failsafe, NR. Ethan reached forward instinctively. Don't, Nora said. Not unkindly, just decisively. He pulled his hand back. She pulled out the tablet, inserted the flash drive, and waited as a biometric prompt flashed green. The screen went dark for a beat, then turned a dull military green. Folders populated in rows. Clearance protocols. Tactical directives. Psychological anchoring. Metorc assignments. One stood out. Z58 Delta, Glenwood overlay. Nora tapped it. A satellite image filled the screen, clean, recent, high-res. Their street, their house, their entire neighborhood broken down into zones, tags, and codes. She zoomed in. Every house had a designation, Asset P, Asset R, Observe, Control. One was marked Primary Origin. Their house. Ethan leaned in. What does that mean? Nora exhaled slowly, as if the air itself might react to the words. It means this isn't just about us. This was planned. We're inside the program. Program, he repeated. Psychological conditioning. Perimeter stress testing. Environmental saturation. You're saying this is a simulation? No, she said. Worse. It's a real-world loop. With real people. But the variables are controlled. And we're the variables? I am, she said softly. You weren't supposed to be here. He blinked. I'm the anchor. The test case. You were, she paused, choosing the word like it mattered. An interference. That's not exactly reassuring. It wasn't a mistake, she said. Just off script. Then came the knock. 3 soft taps. Back door. Ethan jumped. Nora didn't move. 60 seconds, she whispered. Maybe less. For what? She didn't answer. Instead, she moved to the hallway closet and opened it, not for jackets or umbrellas, but for a small tactical bag already packed. Inside, signal disruptors, backup IDs, a roll of old cash and rubber bands, and another burner phone still in factory wrap. You had a go bag, he asked, stunned. I packed 4. Of course she did. The lights flickered once. Ethan's phone went dead. The router blinked. Then the camera feed cut to black. They're rerouting us, Nora said. Not just power. Authority. Ethan moved toward the garage, but the breaker panel was already fried. When he returned, Nora was by the kitchen table, lit by a single candle, reviewing maps on the tablet like a battlefield commander awaiting air support. I can't do this, he said finally, breaking the silence. I'm not built for this. I'm not like you. She looked up. You don't have to be the weapon, Ethan. That's why I'm here. And it hit him then. This wasn't just protection. This was love, the most tactical, calculated kind. He sat down, the tension in his spine dissolving like wet concrete. Why didn't you tell me sooner? You didn't ask, she said simply. The doorbell rang. For 59 a.m. 3 figures in dark suits. Same as before. No logos. No names. Just static faces and a manila envelope. Nora opened the door before they could knock again. No badges, she asked. Not required, said the one in front. We're here to review next steps. Why not just admit it? She said. Admit what? That you're not here for resolution. You're here to measure fear. A pause. We're here to offer clarity, he said. No, Nora replied. You're here because you haven't been stopped. The man behind him twitched, hand moving to his belt, not for a weapon, but for a mic. Nora clocked it instantly. You can record this, she said. I'm not the one who'll need to deny it. They handed her the envelope. She didn't open it. Why not look inside? He asked. Because I already know what it says, she replied. And what's that? That this house is no longer ours. That you've reassigned the deed, scrubbed the records, and you're waiting for us to vanish quietly. That's not the language. No, she agreed. Just the meaning. A drone buzzed faintly overhead. You're being watched, Ethan said. The lead man smiled. That doesn't intimidate us. It should, Nora said. It documents you. Then she stepped forward. If you escalate. I don't escalate, she said. I neutralize. The second man flinched. She held her position just long enough to let the porch light catch her eyes. Leave before I stop pretending this is civil. They left. No resistance. No reply. Inside the envelope was their deed, redacted and retyped. A QR code led to a site labeled Network Occupancy Transition Initiative. Access restricted. Later that night, a business card appeared under the door. No name. Just a number. Nora picked it up, stared at it, and whispered, They've made contact. It wasn't the business card that unnerved Ethan. It was Nora's silence. She stared at the number like it had fangs. No name. No company. Just 9 digits and a faint imprint where ink had bled into paper grain, like it had been printed on the go, with urgency, not polish. What does it mean? Ethan finally asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked to the freezer, pulled out the lasagna Karen Whitaker had delivered a week prior, and placed it on the counter like a crime scene artifact. You're not going to eat that now, right? Ethan half-joked. Nora peeled back the foil. Inside, under the top layer of zucchini, embedded into the foil liner, was a sliver of reflective polymer no bigger than a button. She picked it up with tweezers, held it to the light. It shimmered faintly. A passive data relay, she said. Short range. Would have pinged every time we opened the fridge. Karen hadn't brought food. She'd planted surveillance. Ethan's blood ran cold. She tagged us. She tried, Nora corrected. I didn't let it broadcast. She dropped the sliver into a lead-lined pouch and turned back to the card. Time to test the number. Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but stopped. He knew better now. Knew when she was already 3 moves ahead. She dialed. 1 ring. 2. Then a voice. You've reached the reactivation desk. Please state clearance. Nora didn't blink. Raven, Echo 316. Signal check. Pause. Confirmed, the voice said. Unit status? Compromised. Surveillance breached. Asset remains dormant. Secondary. Viable. Requesting shadow override. Another pause. The kind that meant someone behind a screen was scrambling protocols. Override granted. Standby for trace. The line went dead. Nora crushed the burner under her heel. Ethan just stared. What the hell was that? A ghost protocol, she said. They think I'm re-entering. It buys us time. For what? For this. She opened the black binder. Inside, dozens of files, some with photos, others with symbols Ethan didn't recognize. But one page was marked with red string, a printout of their neighborhood. At the top, Z58 Delta, primary test loop. Subheader, emotional reintegration under occupancy duress. Below it, a line of names. Nora's. Ethan's. A third, Karen Whitaker. Only her name wasn't Karen. Not originally. Whitaker was the alias. Her real name was Lillian Corville, former civilian liaison, subcontractor, and asset handler for the Network Directorate. Discharged with incomplete evaluation after a failed containment mission in 2019. Last known assignment, Utah. She's not HOA, Ethan muttered. She's the architect. She's the handler, Nora said. She's here to trigger a loop reset. Ethan didn't want to believe it, but the pieces were forming their own gravity. The psychological targeting, the fines, the inspection sweeps, the ghost agency, they were pressure points. Break the subject. Trigger the pattern. You think Karen, sorry Lillian, set this all up? No, Nora said. I think she was sent to end it. That was when the power surged. Not a flicker, an inversion. The lights glowed, dimmed, then pulsed like they were breathing. The tablet on the table blinked green. New file incoming. Subject, failsafe, Directive Z58A. Nora tapped it open. A photo loaded. It was their house. The timestamp, 8 months before they moved in. In the frame, Nora, standing on the porch. Same boots, same jacket, same stance, but blank, like a ghost caught mid-glitch. Ethan's voice cracked. That's not possible. I never posed for this, Nora said. But it's you. No, she touched the screen. It's who I was. Before the reset. The document expanded. Loop anchor unstable. Emotional saturation approaching critical. If loop fails, deploy command override and initiate sector rollback. Ethan stumbled back. They're going to erase the neighborhood. All of it, Nora said. Not just us. Everyone. But why? What's the point? Control, she said. Test cases. Compliance mapping. Identity cohesion. Through fake HOAs? Nora looked at him. What better way to enforce structure than through people who willingly submit to it? Then came the buzz. Drone overhead. Small. Quiet. But watching. Ethan grabbed his phone. No signal. No Wi-Fi. The network label read no authority. A digital blackout. They were offline. Fully. Then, the sliding door rattled. A silhouette stood in the yard. Tall. Still. Watching. Nora didn't flinch. She turned off the lights, pocketed the burner, and whispered, if they breach, don't speak. Don't move. Just follow my lead. The figure walked forward. 1 step. 2. Then turned away. Gone. But not retreating. Redirecting. The next morning, a package arrived on the porch. Unmarked. Inside, a blueprint of the neighborhood. Every house. Every family. Every backstory. Handwritten on the bottom corner. Emotional node alpha, active. Beneath it, another photo. Karen Whitaker. Smiling. Uniformed. Standing in front of their house. Dated. 3 years ago. She had always been here. Watching. Waiting. Programming. Nora stared at the blueprint for a long time. Her hands trembling just once. She was my supervisor, she whispered. Back in Bahrain. You're sure? She oversaw my debrief after the failed mission. What mission? Nora didn't answer. Instead, she said the one thing Ethan hadn't expected. She's not here for me. Ethan blinked. Then who? Nora looked up. You. It didn't compute at first. Ethan Calloway, suburban husband, part-time journalist, full-time skeptic, staring at the blueprint of his own neighborhood, hearing his wife, a former naval intelligence officer, say she's not here for me. She's here for you. He laughed. Reflexive. Unsteady. Me? He repeated, voice half shattered. You think I'm what, important? I ghostwrite city council blog posts, Nora. I once got locked out of my own LinkedIn account because I forgot the name of my high school mascot. But she wasn't smiling. Nora turned the blueprint around, pointed to a box on the edge of the schematic. It was color-coded differently than the others. Red outline. Gold interior. Labeled. Node A support unit, unverified origin. Emotional tether, active. Reinforcement loop, persistent. Unknown variables, high risk. That was Ethan's house. That was Ethan. You weren't just interference, she said. You're the tether. The kitchen felt smaller. You think I was placed here? He asked, more to the ceiling than to her. Like a plant. Nora hesitated, then tapped another file. A personnel log. Dozens of names. Most marked cleared or erased. But one name remained active. Ethan Calloway, recruit. Phase 0. Embedded status, confirmed. Memory integrity, compromised. No, Ethan whispered. No, no, no. That's not. But the screen scrolled on, obedient to no one. There were logs. Dozens. Dates, times, events, conversations, movements, even things he didn't remember doing. One stood out. March 4th, 2021. Observation confirms subject unaware of conditioning layer. Tether integrity holding. I don't remember any of this, he said, backing away like the screen might bite. That's the point, Nora said. You weren't meant to. He collapsed into the chair. though it creaked under the weight of things not physical. I'm not some pawn. No, she said softly. You're the anchor. And what the hell does that mean? It means, Nora took a deep breath, like she was diving into waters she hadn't tested yet. It means they didn't just design this neighborhood to observe me. They designed it to hold me, to keep me contained. And they used you to do it. Ethan felt hollow. They built a marriage, he said bitterly. They built a life. They built me. No, Nora said, voice steady. That part was real. He looked up, eyes storming. How can you know that? She didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, she pulled out a second flash drive, one she hadn't shown him before. It was unmarked. No label. Just a strip of masking tape with a faded number, 812B. I wasn't supposed to have this, she said. It's a trace archive. Every conversation, every message, every pattern. She plugged it into the backup laptop. Video files loaded. Dozens. Then, a folder labeled Reinforcement Loop, Ethan. She clicked one. A grainy clip played. Nora, from behind, sitting at a cafe table. Ethan approached with 2 coffees, made a joke about the weather. She smiled. The camera was far, maybe a drone, or a planted lens. This was our second date, Ethan said quietly. She played another. A hotel balcony in Madrid. Midnight. Ethan shirtless, holding a towel like a cape. Nora laughing so hard she almost dropped her drink. Then another. Their first fight. A stupid argument about packing boxes too early. Recorded through their old apartment window. The timestamp was before they ever bought a ring. They were watching the whole time, Ethan whispered. They've always been watching. No, Nora said, pausing the video. They weren't watching. They were calibrating. Ethan looked at her. You said I was the anchor. What does that mean now? It means if you leave, Nora said, the loop collapses. He stood. Anger sharp now. So what? You've been playing along. Keeping me close so I don't trip the alarm. No, she said. They used you to keep me in place. But what they didn't expect was... She faltered. What? That you'd become real to me, she said. For a second, the world tilted. I don't know what's real anymore, he admitted. Not you. Not me. Not this house. That's exactly what they want. Then the doorbell rang. Not loud. Just a single chime. Nora's head snapped to the camera feed. It was back online, briefly. One frame. Karen Whitaker. Standing on the porch. Not smiling. Not holding a lasagna. Not pretending. She was in uniform. Not an HOA uniform. Not anything suburban. It was a gray jacket with no insignia, black gloves, and a small badge that pulsed with a faint red light. Ethan stared. That's not a real badge. It is, Nora said. Just not for any department you'd find in a phone book. They stood frozen. The chime again. Do we answer? He asked. She's not here for negotiation, Nora replied. She pulled the last drawer in the kitchen island open. Inside, a secure radio. She flicked it on. Command, she said into it. Subject Karen Whitaker has initiated breach protocol. Standing by for directive. The radio crackled. But instead of a voice, there was music. An old song. One they both recognized. Louis Armstrong, We Have All the Time in the World. Nora's face drained of color. What does that mean? Ethan asked. It means, she whispered, we're already in the next phase. Louis Armstrong's voice crackled through the radio like a haunting from another time. The warmth of the melody was grotesque against the sterile, paranoid chill now filling the Callaway kitchen. Nora stared at the speaker like it had just spoken in tongues. Ethan whispered, what does that mean, we have all the time in the world? She didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, she walked slowly to the kitchen window and peeked out through the slat of the closed blinds. Karen Whitaker, no longer the suburban charade but something colder, taller, still stood there, motionless. She wasn't holding a clipboard or a casserole. She wasn't pretending to be friendly. She was waiting. She's not armed, Ethan said, trying to fill the silence. She doesn't need to be, Nora replied. Not if the weapon already walked through the door with her. What weapon? Nora turned from the window. You. Ethan froze. Me. She's not here to retrieve me anymore, Nora said, voice low. She's here to activate you. Before he could protest, she returned to the laptop, yanked the backup drive, and slid in the one marked Cloud Cache Dubai. Do not wipe. The boot time was almost instant. The screen blinked through a series of files, most in gibberish, encrypted or encoded in patterns even Ethan couldn't parse. Then it paused. A folder blinked. Glenwood. Tier 3. Override events. Nora clicked it. A list populated. Node activation protocol. Anchor loop correction. Ethan Callaway. Echo agent. Contingency, if acknowledged, initiate mirror command. Ethan felt his heart stumble. Nora, he said, why is my name under something called Echo Agent? I don't know, she said, but her voice didn't sound like it believed itself. Ethan reached over her shoulder, clicked the file labeled Echo Agent, Contingency. A video loaded. Grainy. Black and white. It showed a younger version of Ethan in a clean room, alone, seated in front of a screen. No voice, no sound, just his own image looking back at him. Then a figure entered the frame. Nora. Only it wasn't her as he knew her. The woman in the frame moved differently. Straighter. She wore a uniform with the same red-lit badge now pulsing on Karen's chest. She leaned down and whispered something into Ethan's ear. He blinked, then nodded. Then the file corrupted. Static. Ethan stepped back like he'd been shoved. That's not me. That can't be me. Nora didn't argue. She simply opened the black binder again. Flipped to the last page. A printed image. A satellite map. Zoomed in. A series of shapes, rooftops, access points, server nodes, interlocked in such a way that the neighborhood, from above, formed something familiar. A circuit. It's a containment net, she said. Every house is a node. Every resident a variable. And me? Ethan asked. You're the pulse. The current. You keep the circuit live. A knock. Not the door this time. The garage. Ethan turned toward the hallway just as a soft clack echoed through the air. Automatic locks disengaging. He grabbed the crowbar. No. No one else gets in here. Nora didn't stop him, but she spoke as he stepped forward. Ethan, she said quietly, if you confront her, she might say things you're not ready to hear. He paused. Are you ready to hear them? I've heard enough, she said. But this isn't about me anymore. It never was. The door creaked open. Karen Whitaker stood in the garage. Not threatening. Not smug. Just present. Her uniform was matte gray. Her gloves shimmered slightly at the fingertips, touch-activated tech, military grade. Her eyes were unreadable. Ethan held the crowbar like a drowning man clinging to debris. Why are you here? Karen's lips curled into something that might have been pity. To finish the loop. What loop? You're not supposed to ask questions anymore, Ethan. I wasn't supposed to know I could, he shot back. Karen took one step forward. Nora appeared beside him, silent as a shadow. Karen's eyes flicked toward her. You broke protocol. You lost control, Nora replied. They stood like former colleagues turned adversaries. The kind that shared secrets and silence in equal measure. Karen turned back to Ethan. Do you remember Reykjavik? Ethan blinked. What? She reached into her jacket. Slowly, deliberately, pulled out a photo. It was a picture of him, standing next to a mural of a blue fox on a cobblestone wall, holding a coffee. A date was scribbled in the corner. January 2018. I've never been to Iceland, Ethan said. Karen handed him the photo. He took it despite himself. You were there for 3 months, she said. Embedded journalist. Cover name. You filed 5 classified entries into the behavioral rhythm study. You just don't remember doing it. He looked at the picture again. It was him, but the smile was off. Empty. That's not real, he said. Karen pulled out a second item, a badge. Just like Nora's, but inverted, black with a blue pulse. It was never supposed to reach this point, she said. You weren't supposed to remember? Then maybe you should have done a better job erasing me. Karen's voice lowered. You're not a prisoner, Ethan. You're the conductor. Without you, the system collapses. Without your belief in the reality we built, none of it holds. That's the point, he growled. I don't believe anymore. Karen tilted her head. Then you better start running. Ethan blinked. What? Failsafe triggers in 12 minutes, Karen said. The zone collapses. All anchors will be nullified. Anchors, he echoed. Karen turned. I tried to keep it clean, she said. But Nora remembered. And you started asking. She looked back at them once, then walked out the garage. Not rushed, just resolved. The house felt like it had exhaled too hard, like it knew what came next. Nora snapped into motion. Pack everything. Drives. Backups. We need to go dark. Fully dark. Ethan didn't move. She said, I'm the conductor. What happens if I leave? Nora stopped. The circuit fails. So we just let them reset it? We don't have to let them, she said, if we burn it first. He looked at her. You're serious? She nodded. I didn't spend a decade inside this experiment to run. So what do we do? Nora opened the final drawer. Inside, one last case. Sealed. marked with 3 letters. GDI, General Disruption Initiative. We detonate the grid, she said, and we break the loop for good. There's something unnatural about preparing to destroy the place you once called home. As Nora Reyes unsealed the GDI case, the General Disruption Initiative kit, Ethan couldn't help but glance around the kitchen. The worn-wood cabinets, the mug with a cracked handle, the fridge magnets from cities he thought he'd actually visited. But none of it was real. Or worse, it was real, but chosen for him. Inside the case, a signal disruptor roughly the size of a car battery, a set of thermal-stamped access cards, a small fold-out antenna rig, and a black, unmarked tablet sealed in a fireproof sleeve. Nora handed him the antenna. "You remember how to use this?" she asked. "I'm a writer, Nora," he replied. "The closest I've come to tech deployment is resetting the Wi-Fi router with a fork." She didn't smile. "You're more than that," she said. "You always were." Ethan looked at the disruptor. "What does it do?" "It reroutes control signals," she replied. "But only once. We can't jam them, not entirely. But we can redirect everything to one place." "What place?" She slid a map across the counter. Hand-drawn. Annotated in red. At the center, a building marked grid house. Ethan narrowed his eyes. "That's the old maintenance shack." "It's not," she said. "It's the hub." He stared. "You're saying that the nerve center for this entire operation, the memory loop, the behavioral signals, the identity tracking, is inside that rusted shed between the tennis courts and the dog park?" "That rusted shed," she said, "is wrapped in active dampening panels and surrounded by a subliminal frequency emitter strong enough to mask it from satellite scans." He blinked. "You're terrifying." "I'm thorough." They packed quickly. No clothes. No food. Just the devices, the backups, the proof. And the truth. It was raining by the time they left. The storm had rolled in like it had been scheduled. And maybe it had. Maybe everything was. They cut through the walking trail under darkness. The path forked where the playground used to be, now a patch of carefully trimmed hedges meant to discourage loitering. Every detail of the neighborhood suddenly felt weaponized. The mailbox placement. The motion sensor lights. Even the dog poop bag dispensers. "Tell me again," Ethan said as they crept under the tree lean, "how this ends." "If we connect the disruptor directly to the relay core inside the grid house, we force the system into feedback," she replied. "Every data point, every behavioral loop, gets reversed, overloaded. The structure collapses. Permanently. And us." Nora didn't answer. She didn't have to. Because as they neared the maintenance shed, Ethan felt it before he saw it. The humming. Low. Subsonic. Like the vibration of buried tension or the bass line of a song you didn't know was playing. The door was locked. Of course it was. Nora didn't bother picking it. She pulled a keycard from her jacket, one she'd swiped from Karen Whitaker's clipboard when they last met, and slid it through the reader. The light turned green. Inside was not a maintenance shed. The space was stark, cold, seamless, lit by light panels that didn't blink or buzz. In the center, a single terminal surrounded by what looked like 6 server towers arranged in a circle. The grid house. Nora moved fast. Set the antenna in the corner, connected the tablet to the main console, and placed the disruptor in front of the terminal like a threat. Ethan stood there, still stunned. "This looks like the inside of a missile silo." "It might be more dangerous than one," she said. The tablet lit up. Code streamed across the screen. Verification. Anchor presence confirmed. Command loop detected. Execute disruption sequence? Nora looked at Ethan. He nodded. She tapped yes. The lights flickered. Then, voices. Not real ones. Not loud. But a flood of whispers filled the room like static shaped into meaning. Anchor present. Loop integrity breach. Signal decaying. Restart override denied. And then, error. Recursive failsafe detected. Begin final protocol. Traceback. The room shook. The tablet sparked. Ethan grabbed it instinctively, but Nora snatched it back. "You can't hold it too long," she said. "It logs biometric data." Too late. On the screen, something changed. The interface disappeared, replaced by a video feed. Karen Whitaker, standing inside a white observation room, looking straight into the camera. "This isn't punishment," she said. "It's preservation. You don't understand what you're unraveling." Ethan shouted, "I understand enough." She looked like she heard him. Then the screen changed again. A list. Thousands of names. Cities. Time codes. And one blinking line. Ethan Callaway. Deployment failed. Memory recall triggered. Nora leaned over his shoulder. "Look at the timestamps," she said. He did. Some were dated as far back as 2015, but one was from the future. December 2025, next cycle initiation, fallback node, Ethan C. I'm a contingency, he whispered. You're the loop. The disruptor bust. The room dimmed. Then silence. Everything stopped. The code froze. The lights dimmed to black. And for a moment, there was nothing. Then, a pulse. One sharp, blue flicker. Then another. The terminal rebooted. The system began restoring. Why isn't it dead? Ethan cried. They buried a reboot deeper than we thought, Nora said. A failsafe inside the failsafe. But we burned it. We burned the mask, she said, eyes scanning the tablet. Not the machine. Outside, the rain intensified. Thunder. Wind. Streetlights blinking like dying stars. They had failed. Or so Ethan thought. Until the screen blinked one final time. External signal detected. Echo protocol resonating. Then a second device in Nora's bag, one she didn't even remember packing, vibrated. She pulled it out. A small black card. Unmarked. Then, hello, Agent Calloway. Welcome back. It started with a sound. Not the roar of thunder outside or the crackling buzz of failing lights, but something deeper. A frequency Ethan felt in his bones rather than heard. Like a piano string strummed in his spine. The black card in Nora's hand pulsed once. Then again. Soft blue light, timed perfectly to Ethan's heartbeat. The screen on the gridhouse console flickered back to life, but now the interface was gone, replaced by a mirror-like feed of static that seemed to form shifting shapes. Nora tilted the card. This isn't Metork, she whispered. It's something older. On the console, new text scrolled across the screen. Echo protocol reinstated. Anchor access. Primary recall node unlocked. Begin traceback. Ethan stumbled backward, the room suddenly too small for how far his mind was falling. He clutched the edge of the disruptor case as something surged through his skull, like memories dragging chains, like a dam breaking in reverse. He saw flashes. A steel room. Lights too bright. A white table. A woman with gray eyes speaking softly. Do you know why you're here? He saw himself in a lab coat. Not a journalist. Not a resident. A researcher. A programmer. A believer. He had designed Glenwood. No, not the architecture. Not the sidewalks or the lawns. He had designed the logic. The psychological rhythm. The behavioral loop. The emotional anchor that would prevent high-value subjects from destabilizing once their identities were reset. He had been the architect of the very system now collapsing around him. And then he'd volunteered. His own words echoed now from a memory not his own. You need someone stable enough to build it, and brave enough to forget it. I'll go in. The final piece clicked. He had wiped himself. Not as punishment. As containment. He had been the failsafe all along. Nora reached for him as he slumped to his knees, the weight of recognition pressing harder than any bullet. Ethan. I did this, he choked. All of it. I built the loop. I was the first to enter it. And I, a god, Nora, I designed you into it. She froze. What? Ethan could barely breathe. They needed an emotional constant. A bond strong enough to survive memory fragmentation. I told them it had to be someone like you. Someone that I could love even if I didn't remember why. She stepped back. He reached for her hand. I didn't know it'd be you. Not really. They pulled your profile. It wasn't supposed to be assigned. But it was, she said quietly. It was, he whispered. And you were stronger than the loop. The console changed again. A figure appeared on screen. Karen Whitaker. Not in a room now, but standing in the rain outside the grid house. She was soaked, still expressionless, but her voice carried like a broadcast meant for them alone. You remember now, she said. Nora stared at the screen. Why him? Karen's voice never wavered. Because Ethan built Glenwood to hold ghosts. Yours, mine, his. We all had reasons to forget. He just happened to be the only one willing to bury himself with the design. Ethan stood. Slowly. Then why come back? He asked. Why now? Because you weren't supposed to break the loop, she said. You were supposed to run it. The screen flashed white. Then loaded one final line. Phase 4. Ghost state triggered. The lights inside the grid house died. And then Karen's voice again, this time behind them. Not from the console. From the doorway. She stood there. No umbrella. No weapon. Just her badge, pulsing blue now instead of red. I didn't come to fight, she said. I came to ask. To ask what? Ethan said. She stepped into the room. To let it all go. Nora raised her sidearm. One more step, and I erase your whole network from this planet. Karen smiled, just faintly. And what happens to the people still inside it? She asked. The other anchors? The other lives still running the pattern because Ethan never wrote a way out for them? Ethan felt the nausea rising again. She's right, he murmured. There are others. They're stuck, Karen said, waiting for a signal that never comes. What do you want? Nora asked. Karen looked straight at Ethan. I want you to finish what you started. The console flickered back on. A prompt blinked. Rebuild loop. Release anchors. Erase network. 3 options. Each one irreversible. You built this to break it, Karen said. But you're the only one who can decide how. Nora stared at him. I'll back your play, she said. Whatever it is. Ethan looked at her. The woman who had protected him even when she didn't know she was being used. The woman he'd accidentally dragged into the simulation of a lifetime. The woman who, against all odds, had loved him even when he forgot how to love himself. He stepped forward, trembling, exhausted, sure of only one thing. He tapped release anchors. The room pulsed. The screen exploded into lines of code unraveling themselves like DNA unwinding. Outside, the wind stopped. Inside, the console dimmed, then powered off completely. Karen nodded once, then walked away. No threat. No goodbye. Just silence. And freedom. 3 days later, the HOA was gone. The violations vanished. Neighbors returned to waving like nothing had happened. But the grid house stayed locked. Blacked out. No power. Just a building now. And Ethan? He no longer needed to ask what was real. Because Nora was still there. And some things, some choices, were more real than any loop. They never spoke about it publicly. Not because they were afraid. Those days were over. But because there were no words that could explain what had happened inside the invisible walls of Glenwood. How do you describe a prison without bars, a war without soldiers, a love that survived synthetic memory? The neighborhood carried on like nothing had happened. HOA notices stopped. Surveillance drones disappeared. The cameras never blinked again. The Network Preservation and Zoning Authority dissolved from the web overnight, as if it had never existed. But the house remembered. So did they. Ethan Calloway spent the first morning of his new freedom sitting on the porch, holding a cup of coffee that actually tasted like coffee for once, not like pre-programmed normalcy. The air smelled different. Real. Slightly too dry, a hint of pine and ozone, flawed, imperfect, beautiful. Nora joined him, barefoot, eyes scanning the horizon like she used to scan perimeters. You keep looking for something, he said softly. I'm just not used to standing still, she replied. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. There was nothing left to fight, at least, not here. But Glenwood hadn't been the only neighborhood. That realization came 3 days later, when a package arrived without return address. Inside a map, dozens of marked locations, suburbs, retirement villages, military housing communities, all tagged under Network's failed network. And one handwritten note. You weren't the only loop. DC. Ethan stared at it for a long time. DC, he murmured. Karen. Maybe, Nora said. Or someone she worked for. Or someone she saved. The map wasn't the end. It was a request. A calling. Do we tell people, he asked. If we do, Nora said, they'll think we're insane. But if we don't, they'll stay trapped. He nodded. That night, he sat in his office, no longer just a writer, but something more. He opened a blank document. Subject. Loop Collapse and Behavioral Reintegration. A Survivor's Manual. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't cinematic. It was a roadmap. For people like them. For the ones who remembered too much, or weren't allowed to remember anything at all. He signed it under a pseudonym, Echo One, and hit upload. The site went live at 3 a.m. Within an hour, 12 visitors had already connected. By morning, dozens more. A forum thread opened. A private message arrived. I saw the white flags too. I thought I was alone. Loop 457, Michigan sector. The movement had begun. 6 months later. The Glenwood house was quieter now. Still not peaceful, but honest. No more false cheer in the doorbell chimes. No more mailbox manipulations or passive-aggressive lawn trimming. Nora had planted real flowers. Not HOA approved. Wild. Asymmetrical. Defiant. Ethan watched her from the porch, heart full of something he no longer tried to name. She caught his gaze. You thinking about writing again? I already am, he said. Just in smaller ways. You still regret building it. He paused. Not building it. Just forgetting why I did. She walked up, kissed his cheek, and whispered, then remember this. and she handed him something. A photograph. Their house, bathed in golden light. A shadow of two people standing in the doorway, blurred, but unmistakably them. On the back, written in her handwriting, "This time, we choose to stay." He smiled. For the first time, the loop was broken. And no one, not Karen, not Metork, not the ghosts of who they used to be, could restart it again.